Hi everybody, who's ready to get this growing season started? I am, and even though it is only early March in my garden, I am starting some fruit and veggie seeds. Now, starting these from seed firstly is a huge money saver, so I'm going to tell you what you can start from seed in March, what you can't start from seed in March, and what you probably just shouldn't start from seed at all. But here's something that you can start. Any leafy greens. We're talking broccoli, kale, spinach, kohlrabi, broccoli rabe. Yes, it is also airplane season. All right, anyway, so yes, there are a ton of leafy greens that can handle light frost and freezes, and they prefer cooler weather. So you'll want to do these plants when temperatures are around 50 degrees Fahrenheit during the daytime, like they are getting to be right now, and nighttime temperatures are usually above freezing, but they don't always have to be above freezing. As long as it's above 25 degrees, you can keep all of these leafy greens outside. So I actually started these seedlings inside 4 weeks ago under grow lights.
I only soaked these for 24 hours and the cauliflowers are...
I was getting a little antsy-pantsy, so I started them under grow lights, and I'm going to show you that grow light setup in a few minutes if you're interested in starting seeds in grow lights. But I don't recommend grow lights or starting seeds indoors if you're a first-time seed grower. Just let Mother Nature do the work. So you see here purple cauliflower, which, by the way, I got this seed packet for free at my local library last year. So this is now 2 years that I used the same seed packet. It cost me $0, and I have like 100 cauliflower plants. So this is the bargain of the century, and it was very easy to do. All I did was I soaked these seeds in some water for about a day, and then after I was done soaking the seeds, I put them inside these little trays. That's it. Now, for the cauliflower, I put them in an individual cell. Each one of them got their own individual cell, but that's not the best situation for things like cilantro, parsley. Where did my cilantro? Oh, here it is. It's so windy, I thought I lost my cilantro. Here's my cilantro. So you can see the way that I put this in. I just took half of a seed packet and I just plopped all of the seeds inside the container. I actually got this tip from another YouTuber, and it's really game-changing for cilantro and parsley because you're picking the cilantro and parsley so frequently that you really want a cluster of like 50 plants in order to get the most out of it. If you're growing a single cilantro plant, you'll never pick it and it's just gonna look terrible, but there's definitely power in numbers for cilantro. So if you are having an issue starting plants from seed, the first problem might be that you're not putting enough seeds in your container. So even those little cells that I just showed you with the purple cauliflower, if you look, you'll see that there is about 1 or 2 seeds, even 3 seeds or 4 sometimes in each cell. You can always cut a seed out, like a plant out, if you have too many, but you can't put a plant in there once you have one that's starting to grow. So let me show you my setup. I'm so excited. I'm doing some big stuff in my front yard to maximize the space that I have and get a really nice veggie garden going because my backyard gets a lot of shade. I complained about that in my previous video that my backyard is too shady, and if you want to grow delicious fruits and veggies, you need a lot of sun. With the leafy greens, what's really great is that not only are they cold weather tolerant, so you can start them a month before your growing season starts. So our growing season starts in early April, but I am starting these seeds in early March. Obviously, they're doing great and we have no big problems, but for tomatoes, for squash, for all of that, I don't start bringing them outside until mid-April, and I do not plant them in the ground until the first week of May, just in case we have a late season cold snap. But I do start bringing them out in about a month. Anyway, so excited. Let me turn things around and show you my front yard. Last year, I put this container bed over here. I got tons of eggplant and tomatoes from this bed. It was a really big success. Who needs a front lawn? Now, I do still have a big front lawn. I'm slowly getting rid of it, but I am starting to turn this into a veggie garden. I've got some nice potting soil that I got on the cheap. It's supposed to be organic and all of that good stuff. And then I got these little planter beds. So I'm going to dig a little hole in the ground and put this planter bed in there. I have another planter bed that I'm going to put in. So this is where I'm going to put all of my leafy greens, and then eventually my tomatoes, my squash. I might buy one more planter bed, and this is going to be my food for the summer. I'm really, really excited about saving money on food this year and growing food that I normally wouldn't see at the grocery store. I want to go inside now. If you want to start plants from seed inside, then you need to make sure that you are setting up your grow lights properly. This does not have to be expensive. This does not have to be fancy. And honestly, I recommend that it's not fancy, because I don't think that gardening should be expensive, and I don't think that starting seeds should look pretty, because I am a person who thrives on chaos. Okay, so I'm in my basement now, and like I said, I am very honest, so let me show you my setup, which is not the prettiest, but you are used to my honesty. If you saw my last video, I showed you all of my plants that are kind of struggling from this winter, although I do have a much, much more positive palm tree update from my parents' house on Staten Island. So stay tuned. The next time I visit my parents' house, probably in a week or so, I'm going to update you on my parents' palm trees. So I'm really, really happy with how that turned out, but you should follow me on Instagram and Facebook if you want to get a sneak peek of how that looks ahead of time. But okay, let me turn things around. This is my little potting area. I use a pink kiddie pool. Chapel Rowan would be so pleased. If you're not familiar with her, she has a song called Pink Pony Club. I don't think it's related to gardening, but if it is about my kiddie pool. This is pepper. And I have a lot of different types of pepper growing this year. I have a lot of basil. This is one of them, the purple basil. This is a pretty expensive type of basil plant. One of these cells will cost about $4 if you buy it at a nursery in a month or so, by the time they get to that size that you'll see them at a nursery. So when you have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times 4, almost 30. I have almost 30 $4 plants. So you do the math. And for a pack of seeds that cost $2, I have more than $100 worth of basil. $2, $100. Like, that is a huge bargain. So all of these plants that are under grow lights, they were either those leafy greens that you just saw outside that can handle the cold. I started those in February, and these warm weather loving plants that I want to get a nice jump on. So I'm also doing 3 types of eggplant. I am so excited about the variety that I am growing of seeds this year. And look at how big these are. 4 weeks in, and we have about an inch of growth on these eggplant. And I can't even put a price. I'm not even worried about just saving money, but I literally wouldn't be able to find these eggplant varieties at a local nursery. Local nurseries are only going to sell the plants that people are gonna buy. So they're not necessarily going to dedicate an entire palette of their garden center to something that no one's ever heard of before, because it's very niche. And so if you want to grow these special varieties, you got to start them from seed, and it's totally worth it. But for eggplant, for peppers, you really do want to start those under grow lights because they take a while to start growing. Now, the exception is if you're not living in New York. If you're living in a mild climate, then you can start them in January or February outside, and you should. All right, so how do you start plants from seed? This is my #1 secret ingredient. It doesn't have to be a plastic cup. It could be a glass cup or a jar, something that you want to recycle. That's totally fine as long as it's transparent. This is your greenhouse dome. You put this over the pot that you put your seeds in. And what it does is it keeps moisture in and it keeps heat in, and this is going to help the seeds sprout, because one of the biggest problems is that there's not even moisture when a seed is starting. If you put it under grow lights, the soil dries out really fast, or it's just drowning in water. So that is one of the biggest problems with starting plants from seed. Another problem is that sometimes you get mold. So the fix here is, I thought I had it out, but I didn't. Okay, this is another important ingredient, hydrogen peroxide. I actually put a little spritz on the top of the soil if I see that there's any type of mold starting to grow. It's only 3%, so it's not pure hydrogen peroxide. You can see on the back of it, it says 3%. And I mean, you don't have to do this, but if you see that mold is starting to grow, hydrogen peroxide will keep that mold and fungus at bay, and that's a really helpful thing, because sometimes things get a little moldy when it's stagnant underneath this glass cup. But if you have it outside, another big benefit to using this glass or plastic cup is that it's going to keep the animals out, it's going to keep the insects out, and it's going to really heat up during the daytime when you get that sunshine. So it could be several degrees warmer inside that cup. But just remember, at night, that temperature is not going to be warmer inside the cup. It's just during the daytime, and that is the same situation if you're starting plants inside a greenhouse that's unheated in your backyard. That greenhouse is going to get just as cold as the inside of your car at night, and that does mean it can get below freezing if the temperature outside is below freezing, but it can warm up significantly during the daytime. So a great place to be for those leafy greens is going to be inside this glass container or plastic container in the month of March. You can start those outside right now. But you cannot start outside any of those delicious squash. You can't do the nasturtiums yet. I mean, you actually could put those seeds outside, but they're not going to sprout yet. They won't start sprouting until April. Some people love winter sowing their seeds. I have not had luck with winter sowing. Highly recommend you YouTube that if you're interested in knowing more, but I have too many squirrels in my yard. They eat everything. They will ransack the place. Anyway, so here's what I'm growing when the weather warms up a little bit more. I am going to start these seeds probably in another week or two, but you could wait until the growing season starts for these. It just doesn't take a very long time for nasturtiums and tomatoes to mature. So if you don't want to grow plants inside because it's a pain, they need a ton of light or else they're going to get very leggy and they're going to die. And so if you're not comfortable with doing that, which I totally get it. I love starting plants inside the house because it's nice to start gardening before the weather warms up. But if you're not into it, then I would wait a little bit. So here's what I'm starting. We've got nasturtium. I love these two, Bloody Mary and Phoenix. Look at the flowers on Phoenix. This is a very cool tomatillo. It is supposed to be a sweet kind of tart flavor, so it looks a little different than your typical one, and you can eat it raw, which most people don't necessarily do with tomatillo unless it's like in a salsa. I'm doing tomatoes. They literally look like grapes. This is gonna be really fun. Apparently you get like 60 fruit in a single cluster, so I think that is going to be very productive. I always try an heirloom tomato. I always hate my life, but we're gonna do Dad's Sunset and see how this does, because apparently it is one of the most flavorful varieties that Baker Creek offers. I am going to do Woolly Kate Yellow. That looks kind of cool. This, I believe, is actually part of their free seeds. Yeah, this is a free seed. So that one I'm just gonna sprinkle the tomatoes on the ground. I promise you, if you start your tomatoes in April or May in the ground, early May, they will catch up with the tomatoes that you buy at the store, the tomato seedlings that you buy at the nursery. They grow very quick from seed. It is so worth it to grow them from seed. We've got another Dad's Sunset because I am chaotic and accidentally ordered two. we're gonna have a lot of tomatoes this year. Look at this watermelon. Not only are you never going to find these watermelon for sale at a local nursery, this beautiful color, but you're not going to get them at a grocery store either. You will never be able to taste the beauty that is an orange watermelon. The yellow ones I see occasionally, but even those are rare. And remember when you used to have to spit the seeds out of a watermelon? You don't have to spit them out anymore because now all the watermelon are seedless at the store, but you get to have that joy of spitting out watermelon seeds again when you grow them yourself. I'm doing melons for the first time ever. I'm gonna do melons. So you don't wanna start these inside, by the way. You definitely don't wanna start melons, squash, tomatoes. Tomatoes you could start inside, but the melons and the squash you can't start inside the house because they grow so fast and they need a ton of light. Even grow lights, I mean, they'll sprout, but you've got to plant them like 2 weeks after you put them in a container because they grow very, very quickly. So I am going to start them either in containers outside and then put them in the ground, or I'm going to start them right in the ground. So that will be in April. I'm doing this very cool plant. It's called a papalo, I believe is how you pronounce it. And it's supposed to be like cilantro, but a heat-loving plant. So this herb is supposed to taste similar to cilantro, but tolerate heat. If you've ever grown cilantro, you know it hates heat very, very much. Look at these beautiful zinnias that I'm gonna be starting. I'm gonna start these very soon, and then I will plant them in April. We've got some tiny zinnias, and then I have another giant zinnia. So it's gonna be a fun time. It's gonna be a good season, and it already started. Even though my growing season doesn't start until April 15th, that's the last frost, and I do not plant in the ground until 2 weeks after my last frost. And if the forecast is cold, then I'll wait even longer, but I won't even evaluate planting things in the ground until 2 weeks after my last frost. So that is my suggestion. If you want to do leafy greens, you can do that as soon as daytime temperatures are in the 50s consistently. Again, doesn't have to be every day that you're hitting 50. Maybe you hit 40 one day, you hit 60 another day, that's fine. But generally you want to be around the 50-degree range. You want to have nights that are above freezing most of the time and not getting deeply, deeply cold. And then you can do your leafy greens. So for me, for anybody who's in the Northeast, that's probably going to be in March for you, unless you're in a colder zone. But these beauties are going to be likely in containers, in grow lights for tomatoes in the next week or two. And then the squash, the sunflowers, the zinnias, the nasturtiums, all of those, I'm gonna start outside second week of April. Hopefully at that point, we'll start getting some days in the 60s and 70s, and that will be warm enough for them to sprout. All right, I'm gonna go, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.